So good morning again, everyone. Um, yeah, so our new Dyson method worked fairly well this morning. I think almost everybody didn't have a problem with it. So we'll continue and we can continue to refine it. I'm quite pleased actually with the way it came out. Um, okay, so that anybody have any questions about that before we get going? Good. Okay. And Gary and Deborah, would you be able to stay on for a minute when we get done this morning?
Can we do it later? Can we do it later? We got, we got something else. We haven't. We're in New York and it's a little chaotic.
Well, New York is always chaotic. What do you
Yeah.
expect? Well, let me just chat with you for a moment when we're done. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
yeah,
5 minutes, 2 minutes,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
All right, good.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So we're going to start with a koan this morning. And it's one of my favorites. And I use it every year about this time because it relates to the season. And yesterday it was 50 degrees and sunny here. So those of you in other parts of the country may not know this, but in Maine, that is springtime. It was wonderful. Got a lot done outside and so on. So this is my favorite springtime koan. And it is from the Blue Cliff record. It is case 36, Changsha Wandering in the Mountains. One day Changsha went wandering in the mountains. Upon returning, he got to the gate. The head monk asked, "Where are you coming from, master?" Shah said, "From wandering in the mountains." The monk asked, "Where did you go?" Shah said, "First I went pursuing the fragrant grasses. Then I returned following the falling flowers." The head monk said, "How very much like the sense of springtime." Shah said, "It even surpasses the autumn dew dripping on the lotuses." Sueto added the remark, "Thanks for your reply." So Changsha went wandering in the mountains. You know, wandering is something very interesting that we almost never do. And I've in partly learning from my friend Rob, I've incorporated it into all the eco workshops that I do. Because one of the things I ask people to do at the beginning is to wander. What's wandering? It has no destination. It has no agenda. It has no plan. It's just allowing our feet to take us. It's allowing us to immerse in the surroundings and allow them to draw us, to guide us. And I talk about a sense of attraction. And we have that sense of attraction. We don't, it's what I call a heart sense. Our heart has certain ways in which it responds to our environment. The sense of attraction, we are drawn to things. They fascinate us, they interest, they pull us in, they bring us into their presence. So when I suggest that folks wander, I suggest that they allow that sense of attraction to operate. And their feet go where they want to go, and they're drawn to whatever it is that they're drawn to. very different from the way we live our lives normally. We always have an agenda. We have someplace we're going. We have something we're trying to accomplish, which in fact is part of the reason we have so much difficulty with Zazen. Zazen, particularly Shikantaza, is just allowing, not going with an agenda, not going with a destination. Very hard. People say, "Oh, I'm not getting anywhere with my meditation." Well, guess what? You're not supposed to. Not supposed to get anywhere. That's a hard concept for us because we're in such a result-oriented culture. Everything's supposed to have a result. Well, Zazen may or may not have a result, but when it does, it typically years before we notice anything. We say, oh wow, that is different. Yeah. So in Zazen particularly, it's difficult if we attach to an outcome. Beyond which, it stifles the process. We can't have openness. We can't have clear presence and have an agenda, an attachment, a journey that we think that we're on. But back to good old Changsha. So he was wandering in the mountains. And I suspect that for Changsha, the wandering was what we just talked about. He's just out there. No agenda, no place that he's going. He's not trying, maybe some of you have this too. I have a thing on my phone that counts how many steps I do. Changsha was not trying to get his 10,000 steps in for the day. Right? He was just out there wandering. And then when asked, where did you go? First, I went pursuing the fragrant grasses. Then I returned following the falling flowers. And the head monk responds, how very much like the sense of springtime. And I think that's sort of a gotcha. Ah, you're attached to springtime. Easy to do. Anybody here like springtime? Raise your hands. Okay, some people are like, well, you don't have spring down in Florida. It's anyway, yeah, springtime. It's wonderful, right? Everything comes alive. The birds are back and the sun is shining and the plants are starting to grow. It's marvelous. Okay. So it's very easy to attach to springtime, as it is to many other things. But this brings up a very important and very subtle point that I think is implicit in this koan. I don't see it often described in the Dharma. That we're going to have emotional states that are elicited by experiences in our lives, and that is not the same thing as attachment. If you go out on a beautiful spring morning and the birds are singing and all the insects are buzzing, etc., and you have a moment of joy, a moment of pleasure, that is not attachment. At least as I see it. And there may be others, oh, you shouldn't feel good when you go out there. No, feel good. Where the problem arises is when we try to cling to that. I wish I could feel this way all the time. I hope it's going to be this way tomorrow, and so on and so forth. So, in taking that moment, that spontaneous reaction, we try to cling to it. We try to grab it. We try to make it into something that it isn't, other than a momentary response, a moment of pleasure, a moment of joy, a moment of ecstasy. Nothing wrong with those things, but we quickly attach to them. And the other way, oh, it's beautiful today, but it's going to rain tomorrow. Well, that's terrible, awful. It's going to be rainy tomorrow. So we also have the aversion side. We have the aversive reaction as well as the clinging reaction. So, in fact, I think that's an important distinction. And I think this koan is making that distinction. Because when we come to Changsha response among the monks is how very much like the sense of springtime. I think he's giving them a little, you're attached there, aren't you? And Changsha says, it even surpasses the autumn dew dripping on the lotuses. Now, what do we know about the autumn dew dripping on the lotuses? The autumn dew is clear and cool. Clear and cool. And so I think what Shangsha is pointing to is that no, this is not the heat of attachment, the heat of clinging, the heat of um, of attachment. This is just the cool clarity of the autumn dew. So this whole thing is a subtle point, but I think it's an extremely important one. If we think that we're going to become completely shed of our reactions, of our emotional responses, because of Zazen, we are not. Zen is not making us into automatons or zombies or something like that. Zen is bringing out our humanity, is revealing it, is releasing it, so that we can respond freely and intimately in the moment. And then not clinging. Right? This clinging is where the suffering arises. Having a moment of joy does not make us suffer, but clinging to that moment of joy makes us suffer. The great way is not difficult, only avoid picking and choosing. If joy comes to us, let's be joyful. On the beautiful spring morning, let's dance and celebrate. And on a cold winter morning, let's huddle by the fire and stay warm. Living fully and experiencing fully in each season. Being there and letting it go. Being there and letting it go. And now I'm talking about seasons of the year, but also seasons of our lives, right? Some of us are in the autumn season. Can we embrace that season? Can we be just there? Can we live each moment without attaching, without clinging, without wishing, oh, I wish I was younger, or I wish I didn't ache so much, or, any of those things? Can we just be with our aging process and appreciate each moment just as we did when we were younger, or maybe more so? So this is, as I said, it's sort of a subtle point, but it's such an extremely important point that we be able to experience the panoply of things that life presents to us moment to moment without clinging or rejecting, just being with and welcoming. It even surpasses the autumn dew dripping on the lotuses. Hmm. Thank you. There's more I want to talk about this movie. I want to stop there, and because I'm going to be segueing, and I want to see what thoughts or comments you have about this.
Something struck me about it. I've heard that come on before. You've mentioned it before. Um, Today that didn't quite before. That I feel like, I feel like the monk is sort of trying to catch him in being attached to the concept of springtime, and springtime is the best of all seasons and all that stuff. And when when the master sort of comes back and says, it's even better than the dew on the lotus and I felt like I just all of a sudden really loved that, because in a way he's sort of going along with what the monk said. Yeah, springtime is really especially great, but he's not attaching to the concept of springtime. He's still purely in the sensory world, and but he's even noting a comparison, that he loves the springtime even more than the fall, but it's not still not a concept. He's just noting that he loves that experience even more, or not even the love, it's just that it's even more enjoyable, and I don't know. There's something so pure about that I just was really struck by it today.
Well, that's wonderful, and yeah, I mean that's, I think what he's pointing to is the purity of the moment, the purity of the experience. You know, not polluting it either way, not clinging, not pushing away, but just being there.
I, I get hung up on it, the description uh, of picking and choosing. If it's surpassing the autumn dew, then it seems like I am choosing spring over autumn. And you went into that the autumn dew is cool and there's a clarity to it. So would that say, I, I just didn't, I find it difficult to go beyond the fact that it's spring is surpassing the autumn dew and that that is a preference. I don't, I don't see the purity, and I know I'm missing something.
When he's talking about surpassing the autumn dew, I think he's talking about the clarity of the moment, the clarity and coolness of the moment. Um, he's, it, I don't believe he's actually talking about autumn dew or comparing it to springtime, but just that clarity of the moment. And that doesn't matter whether it's spring, autumn, winter, again, it comes back to, if we can be really with that moment, experiencing it deeply, intimately, but not attaching, then we have it.
I'd like to try to clarify what I was the way I was responding to it is that it's not like he's choosing the springtime. Is to me, it seems like it's just like he's just acknowledging that he gets even more pleasure in the springtime. It's not to me. It's like it's not like he's attached to one or the other, but that he's just noting, you know, that there's even more pleasure for him in the springtime. Yeah.
Maybe it's because that's what he's experiencing at that moment. And the fall, he has a memory of the fall and the clarity of that. But the now is what is what he's experiencing at the moment. And just to add to what Deborah said, which I of course relate to, is that you know, this moment is all we have, and there's you don't doesn't have to go beyond anything else. Um, that experience was that. It to me it just seems so simple, but you know.
Good. Thank you. Any further thoughts on that?
I just add that both the comments make a lot of sense to me, and I do. Uh, I I think it's just shifting the way I look at the koan a little bit, which is exactly what's supposed to happen, I think. Um, just another question as far as if we uh, want to set ourselves up to be able to enjoy the spring or the present moment would wandering sort of be a way to do that, to set oneself up to just go out and see what is attracting us and what might appeal to us. I'm just thinking how easy it is. There's zazen, and then sometimes just shifting into, okay, now I go live my life without the preparation of reminding myself to stay open to whatever is out there. So thinking of that as wandering might be helpful for me. So thank you.
Well, yes. There's two senses of wandering here. Okay, yes, there's the go in the woods and wander. Okay, but the idea of living our life to the greatest extent possible, open to experience, and not bringing a heavy agenda to, that's really what Zen is talking about. It's really not knowing. When we talk about not knowing, that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about just going into each moment and seeing what it has to give us. Now, the interesting thing is, this is kind of a side thing, but not something I was listening to lately. This guy suggested that when we are not knowing, when we are just being, that we are getting out of our conditioning and sort of into the quantum field and opening all sorts of possibilities. In the moment of not knowing, all possibilities exist. When we know, we narrow it way down. I know today's going to be good. I know tomorrow's going to be bad, whatever. We've just eliminated all the other possibilities. But when we're just not knowing, every moment is an adventure. We have the possibility in every moment of being surprised, of being, even in the midst of the most mundane things. Because we're not carrying this mental agenda with us, and the likes and the dislikes and all of those things.
In some ways, wandering, the idea of wandering means I have to move beyond habit. So I go in the woods, and sometimes I think I'm wandering, but I've been to the same place so many times. When does it wandering, and when is it just my habit? It's kind of some sort of dynamic there that, oh well, that I guess there's good habits, and I don't know. It just kind of can take over, and then you're not really wandering anymore, I guess.
Well, yeah, yes. I mean, again, this is a subtle point, but it's an important point. It's like if we have all our past experiences as the template for our experience in this moment, we're not experiencing this moment. We're bound up in those past experiences. We can't have a fresh and new beginning. So it has nothing to do with geography, but it has everything to do with whether we're reliving the past or having a fresh new experience in this moment. And it could be the same piece of ground. The difference is up here, not out here. Does that make sense? Kathy, did you?
I've been walking, a lot of the same paths in the woods where I live now for, the last 36 years, and I'm surrounded by woods, and I'm always struck by that moment when I, just as an example, I've been wandering in the same place for, years and years and everything else. But every once in a while, I'm struck by something I never saw before. I'll be like, oh, what a a rotting tree, what look at the mark. Oh my gosh, look at the marks in that tree that I never saw before. So the idea of even the geography of it changes. There's always something new to see. And I was just thinking about, okay, so when I go to the grocery store, right? So the town that I grocery shop in and that I do a lot of things in is about 15 miles away. I'm just thinking about seeing that rather as driving to the market. Oh, I got to go now. I got to drive to the market. Opening to any adventure like along the way, whatever that might be. It's not just driving to Peterborough, it's just I like that idea of wandering, even when I do have a destination, but I can wander to get there. So that's it. Thanks.
Well, Kathy, I think you come to a very important point. I think we sometimes like put everything on hold, like you say. Oh, I'm going shopping, and so I've now created a little box that I put my experience in, and I miss the eagle flying overhead. I miss whatever, because I'm in the shopping box. So I think it's the more that we can just be in the experience without creating the box, without creating the label, without being conditioned. This drive has always been boring, so it's going to be boring today. Don't know that. You might get a flat tire. But and by the way, that's the real challenge, right? Finding it fulfilling even when we get the flat tire. Part of the adventure, part of the journey. But it's such an essential point, because we create those boxes in our life constantly, right? Chores. I've got to do chores, right? And once I put things in the chores box, they're not interesting, they're not fun, they're not stimulating. They're just like, I got to get this done, And yet, Zen points to that. Zen points to sweeping the floor. Our ordinary lives. We tend to crave the exciting. Springtime being a good example. But can we also appreciate a dark day in November, a rainy day in March? I have two forecasts that told me it's not going to rain till tonight, and it's been raining for the past hour. Speaking of rain, March, which kind of alters my plans for the day a little bit. Okay, so is this an okay time to make the segue here? I couldn't think of a skillful way to make the segue, so I just thought, okay, let's just do it. What I would, where am I going to start? I'm going to start with the obvious. These are unprecedentedly difficult times for our nation and for each of us individually and collectively. And what I want to talk about for a moment is the relationship between that and Zen, and particularly our formal, well, our individual practice, but also our formal group and collective practice. And I'm going to start by sharing my view, and you all can feel absolutely free to disagree. But I'll also tell you a story that relates to my view. I think that the Dharma is apolitical and should always be such for a number of reasons. So when I try to be careful when I talk that I'm talking about loving kindness and compassion, because loving kindness and compassion are not political, right? They are the fundamental two teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. But if I fall into the realm of talking about we should be doing this today, we should be standing up to that, we should be opposing that, we should be, now I feel like I've entered a different realm, the realm of politics. Why do I feel strongly about this? Because I feel like the Dharma, it's not a liberal Dharma. It's not a progressive Dharma. It's not a conservative Dharma. It is a Buddha Dharma available to all. To all. And if we allow our political views to permeate our discussion of the Dharma, then we risk alienating people who have a different view. Now, I could speak to my own experience on this. And again, maybe this is why I feel so strongly about this. And I've talked about this before. When I was a student at Zen Mountain Monastery many, many years ago, it was at a time in my life when my views were pretty conservative, which was not popular there. So I just kept my mouth shut most of the time. But that said, over the years of practice, the Dharma kind of worked on me and my views shifted. I became, I would hope, like to think, more compassionate, more open, so on and so forth. And this is why I think it's so important that, and is it possible? Is it possible to be a compassionate conservative? We used to use that term, right? Years ago, we talked about compassionate conservatives. And now conservative is synonymous with crazy stuff. That somebody's out giving a Hitler salute and they say he's a conservative. No, that's not. We've lost the meaning of conservative, so that's a whole different story. But the fact is that there's not only one way to compassion. There's not only one type of political view that's compassionate. And maybe David Brooks is an example. He's a pretty reasonable fellow, even though he's a conservative, right? And he's not a racist. He's not a misogynist. None of those things. So we now conflate conservatism with all those other things, which are not inherently. Anyway, don't want to get too far into that zone. So my interest, and you all can feel free to disagree with me. I feel that Zen has to be a safe space. And part of why it stays a safe space is we don't introduce politics per se. Now, you may say, well, sometimes I'm very upset. Sometimes I'm very angry. Sometimes I'm very frustrated, and I want to express that. So my solution would be express the motive, the emotion, not the cause. Right? That's the part that we own anyway. That's the part that's the Dharma. My Dharma is not about how somebody else feels or how somebody else acts. It's how I react and how I feel. So I can stay in that space. dealing with my thoughts, my reaction, and so on and so forth, but not get into what other people are thinking or doing. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't do those things elsewhere in my life. I'm not suggesting that. I'm not suggesting that people stay out of the current. I don't even know it's politics anymore. It's more about culture and the future of democracy, and that's not politics to me. But anyway, that said, I'm not by any stretch of imagination suggesting that people not be involved in those things, but I I do feel that we should not bring it into the context of Buddha Dharma Sangha. Thoughts, questions, disputes?
I feel pretty much exactly the same as you do on that.
Yeah, I do too. I think I find if there is some small discussion of what's going on, it very quickly goes down a rabbit hole of us and them. So I think it's appropriate to stay away from that. I'll just go a step further. I also think that my Zen practice helps me to be open to the suffering that those who may now be trying to tear down the government are going through, rather than just criticizing them, understanding them more. I think my practice helps with that.
Well, it should always help us to be more compassionate. It should, always help us to be more compassionate and to be more willing to recognize and understand other people's experience and find that root, find that common humanity where we're not creating other. And it can be kind of a slippery slope. It's kind of a slippery slope moment to moment, I think. And, I think we ain't seen nothing yet. I think there's possibilities that things will get a lot more challenging before they get better, if they ever get better. And so that's why I think it's sort of relevant to be talking about this right now and to kind of also hold it in our collective imagination and revisit it from time to time if we need to. If we were in Gaza right now, or if we were in Ukraine right now, we might be having a very different discussion. Because reality is impinging on those folks in a very different way. And when you're dodging bombs and missiles and things, it's a different world, isn't it? But again, within our current context, I think it sounds like there's a sort of consensus. We need to kind of stay open and as best we can not bring in political things, or if we do not political things, but if we, it's one thing to talk about our feelings, our experiences, another thing to kind of talk in those broad generalities. This is one of those moments I'm not sure what the silence means. Everybody satisfied, everybody dissatisfied, everybody tuned out.
Well, I'll add just a little bit more, and then you can, Kathy. That I do think that we have been very uh, well served by many of the talks that you have given, Peter, where you refer to the difficult times that we're going through, so I think it's good to acknowledge the emotions and the difficulties that we're all feeling, which I think you've done, without getting into, uh, you know, too bad they're doing that to us, or getting into some issues beyond the emotions.
Oh, I'm just letting you know that I'm satisfied. You're wondering, and that's all. I'm just letting you know that. Yeah, and these talks and being together with my Zen group here, and generally, I told you I have like 3 different Zen groups, but these Sunday mornings are, and your talks and just listening to everybody else, it, has helped me a little bit more in, just a little bit more in, as you were saying, Susan, little momentary moments of getting in touch with some compassion, um, for the people who, in my mind see as enemies, uh, in this administration. And it's work. Um, or it's just, I don't know so much as work, it's just an awareness that they are human beings, just like, that we're all human beings. That's all, just a little bit of progress, or whatever you call it. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, and your again, your comment, Kathy, just kind of led to another one of these kind of subtle places. You know, having compassion doesn't make us doormats, right? And so that's the other thing. We can, those who choose can still stand up, can still resist, can still be active, and yet still have compassion for the other, you know, and not cause that separation. But it's, so it's possible, both things are possible. It's possible to have a stand, take a stand, and yet not um not relinquish that completely, and yet have compassion. um but again, that's kind of, I want to place that a little bit outside of the bounds of our discussion as a sangha, you know. Does that make sense? No, and Daisang is different too. That's a private discussion. So, you could say things in Daisang that you might not say here, or okay. Are we at a place to wrap up?
Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it.